You need only $300,000 in 2026 to never work again. And before you dismiss that as fantasy, let me be very clear about what never work again actually means. It does not mean yachts, private jets, or posting photos from five-star resorts pretending you're productive. It means freedom. It means control. It means waking up on a Tuesday morning and realizing no one can fire you, no boss can threaten you, no market crash can push you into panic, and no bad month can erase your dignity. That is the real definition of wealth, and it has nothing to do with excess. It has everything to do with math, discipline, and understanding the economic reality we are stepping into right now. The world entering 2026 is not the world your parents prepared you for. Inflation is no longer a temporary inconvenience. It has become a structural feature of modern economies. Governments have printed unprecedented amounts of money since 2020. Interest rates have been weaponized to fight inflation, and central banks are walking a tightrope between controlling prices and avoiding systemic collapse. Real wages have lagged behind asset inflation for years, which means if you rely solely on a paycheck, you are already losing the game even if your salary increases every year. At the same time, technology has compressed opportunity. What once required factories, offices, and large teams can now be executed with laptops, software, and leverage. This is not a moral argument. It's a financial one. $300,000 sounds small because people confuse capital with lifestyle. Capital is not meant to be spent. Capital is meant to work. If you spend your capital, you are poor again. If your capital produces cash flow, you are free. In 2026, with realistic conservative assumptions, $300,000 properly allocated can generate enough annual income to cover a modest but stable lifestyle indefinitely. Not extravagance, stability. And stability is underrated by people who have never lived without it. Let's talk about numbers, because emotion doesn't pay bills. Historically, diversified income-producing assets, including dividend-paying equities, conservative real estate exposure, private credit, and cash-flowing digital assets, can reasonably generate between 6 and 10% annually without reckless risk if managed correctly. Even at the lower end, 6% on $300,000 produces $18,000 a year. That alone is not enough. But this is where most people stop thinking, and that's why they stay trapped. Capital does not operate in isolation. It operates alongside cost control, geographic arbitrage, tax efficiency, and time. The average person dramatically overestimates how much money they need because they anchor their expectations to high-cost cities, debt-fueled lifestyles, and consumption patterns engineered by advertising. In 2026, remote work, global mobility, and digital infrastructure allow you to live comfortably in dozens of countries on $15,000 to $25,000 a year while maintaining access to modern healthcare, high-speed internet, and personal safety. This is not theory. It is happening right now. People who understand this are not loud about it. They are quiet, disciplined, and invisible to the noise. Now let's scale the thinking properly. $300,000 at 8% produces $24,000 annually. Combine that with intelligent tax structuring, which in many jurisdictions reduces effective tax rates on investment income dramatically compared to earned income, and your net spendable income increases without increasing risk. Add to that occasional low-effort income, not work in the traditional sense, but optional consulting, licensing, or digital products, and you've created a buffer. The key word here is optional. The moment income becomes optional, your psychology changes. Fear disappears. Desperation disappears. Bad decisions stop happening. The mistake people make is assuming that freedom requires excess. It doesn't. Excess is fragile. Freedom is resilient. In a world of rising volatility, geopolitical tension, AI disruption, and unstable labor markets, resilience is the highest return investment you can make. Corporations understand this. Governments understand this. Individuals are the last to accept it because they are emotionally attached to identities built around work rather than outcomes. The labor market of 2026 will not reward loyalty. It will reward adaptability. Artificial intelligence will not eliminate all jobs, but it will compress wages in knowledge work and eliminate the middle layers of value creation. This means more people competing for fewer high-paying roles, while asset owners quietly benefit from productivity gains. This is not fair, but fairness is irrelevant to financial survival. You either position yourself as an owner of cash-flowing assets or you remain a renter of opportunity. $300,000 is not a starting point for consumption. It is an end point for accumulation. The path to it is far more important than the number itself. It requires aggressive saving, intelligent risk-taking early, restraint later, and an understanding that time is more powerful than intensity. Most people fail not because they can't earn money, but because they cannot stop upgrading their lifestyle every time their income increases. Lifestyle inflation is the silent killer of freedom. The irony is that the closer you get to financial independence, the less you need to prove anything to anyone. Status symbols lose their appeal when your time belongs to you. The real luxury is silence. The real luxury is control over your calendar. The real luxury is knowing that market downturns are opportunities, not threats, because you are not forced to sell at the wrong time to survive. In 2026, asset selection matters more than ever. We are not in an era of blind index investing without consequence. Interest rates have reshaped valuations. Capital is no longer free. This has reintroduced discipline into markets. High-quality cash flowing businesses, profitable technology platforms, infrastructure, energy, and income generating real estate are back in focus. Speculation without cash flow will be punished. Stories without earnings will collapse. This is good news for disciplined investors with modest capital because it reduces competition from reckless money. The idea that you need millions to escape the workforce comes from a misunderstanding of risk and return. Large portfolios often carry large lifestyle obligations. Smaller portfolios paired with intentional living are more efficient. The goal is not to be rich. The goal is to be unfireable. Think about that word carefully. Unfireable means no single employer, client, or market event can destroy your ability to survive. That is the position corporations fight for every day. That is the position individuals ignore until it's too late. $300,000 invested correctly is not about never being productive again. It's about never being desperate again. Desperation leads to bad partnerships, bad jobs, bad debt, and bad timing. Financial independence eliminates desperation. It gives you leverage in every negotiation because you can walk away. Walking away is power, and power, when used quietly, compounds. The current global environment rewards patience more than speed. We have moved from an era of easy growth to an era of selective growth. Capital allocators are being rewarded again. Savers are being rewarded again. This shift is subtle, but it is profound. Those who understand it early will benefit disproportionately. The reason this concept feels uncomfortable is because it contradicts the narrative sold to you for decades. Work harder, climb ladders, buy more, retire late. That model is breaking under its own weight. Pensions are underfunded. Social security systems are stressed. Governments are incentivized to keep people working longer, not freer. Relying on institutional promises in 2026 is a risk, not a plan. $300,000 is achievable for far more people than will ever admit it. It is not achieved through luck. It is achieved through focus. Focus on income early. Focus on saving aggressively. Focus on acquiring assets, not liabilities. Focus on saying no more often than yes. Every unnecessary expense today is stolen freedom tomorrow. The most dangerous phrase in personal finance is "I'll enjoy life later." Later is not guaranteed. But discipline today creates options tomorrow. Options are the real currency of freedom. And here is the uncomfortable truth. Once you reach this level of independence, you may realize that work itself changes. You don't stop contributing. You stop tolerating nonsense. You work on what matters. You work when you choose. You work with people you respect. That is not retirement. That is evolution. The future belongs to those who understand cash flow, risk management, and personal restraint. Noise will increase. Distractions will multiply. The economy will remain volatile. But math does not care about fear. Discipline does not care about trends. Capital does not care about opinions. $300,000 is not a dream number. It is a responsibility number. It demands maturity. It demands patience. It demands that you stop outsourcing your future to employers, governments, or hope. And if you are listening carefully, you can feel the shift already happening because the people who understand this are no longer asking how to get rich quickly. They are asking how to stay free permanently. They are asking how to insulate themselves from shocks, how to reduce dependence on any single system, and how to turn volatility into an ally rather than an enemy. This is the mindset shift that separates people who chase money from people who use money. In 2026, chasing money will exhaust you, but using money will liberate you because systems are accelerating faster than human endurance. Burnout is becoming normal. Anxiety is becoming common. Financial fragility is becoming invisible until it explodes. The antidote to all of that is not more effort. It is better structure. Structure means understanding that income is temporary, but ownership is durable. Your job can disappear overnight. Your skills can be automated. Your industry can collapse. But a well-constructed portfolio that produces cash flow across different sectors, currencies, and geographies does not wake up one morning and quit on you. It does not get emotional. It does not negotiate salaries. It simply works, quietly, predictably, if you respect the rules of capital. One of the most misunderstood ideas about never working again is that it requires extreme frugality or a monk-like existence. It doesn't. It requires intentionality. There is a massive difference between deprivation and prioritization. Deprivation feels like punishment. Prioritization feels like control. When you prioritize freedom, expenses naturally reorganize themselves. You stop paying for convenience that saves minutes but costs years of freedom. You stop financing depreciation. You stop confusing visibility with value. In the current scenario, debt is becoming more expensive and less forgiving. Interest rates have fundamentally changed consumer behavior, whether people admit it or not. Variable rate debt has become a silent predator. Credit card balances are climbing globally. Auto loans are extending to absurd lengths. This is not a sign of prosperity, it is a sign of strain. People are borrowing time from their future to maintain an image in the present. That trade always ends badly. Those who reach the $300,000 mark without destroying themselves psychologically understand one critical principle: simplicity scales, complexity breaks. They avoid financial instruments they do not understand. They avoid leverage they cannot survive without. They avoid promises of guaranteed returns because guarantees do not exist in markets, only probabilities. This conservative approach does not make headlines, but it produces outcomes, and outcomes are the only thing that matters. In 2026, currency risk is no longer theoretical. Geopolitical realignments, trade fragmenta, and regional conflicts are influencing monetary policy in ways that ripple through everyday life. Diversifying income streams across currencies is no longer a luxury, it is a form of insurance. A portion of your cash flow coming from assets denominated outside your home currency reduces exposure to political decisions you cannot control. This is how institutions think. Individuals rarely do, and that is why institutions survive shocks better. Another reality people avoid is taxation. Taxes are rising not because governments are malicious, but because debt levels are unsustainable without increased revenue. Earned income is the easiest target. Investment income structured correctly is treated differently in many jurisdictions. This is not about evasion, it is about intelligence. Understanding the difference between income types can add years of freedom without increasing risk or effort. Ignorance in this area is expensive. $300,000 does not arrive all at once for most people. It accumulates quietly, often invisibly, while others are distracted by noise. The people who reach it are not necessarily the highest earners. They are the most consistent allocators. They automate decisions. They remove emotion from investing. They understand that boredom is often a sign of a healthy financial strategy. Excitement usually signals risk. As artificial intelligence continues to reshape productivity, margins will concentrate around ownership of systems rather than participation in them. This is why equity matters. Even small ownership stakes, compounded over time, outperform linear effort. This is not speculation, it is history repeating itself with new tools. Those who adapt early will not need heroic effort later. The idea of never working again also forces an uncomfortable question: how much is enough? Without an answer, no amount will ever satisfy you. Enough is a number, not a feeling. It is defined by expenses, risk tolerance, and desired flexibility. When you define it clearly, the goal becomes achievable. When you leave it vague, it becomes infinite and unreachable. People often ask whether $300,000 will still be enough given inflation. That question misses the point. Inflation destroys idle cash, not productive assets. Assets that generate income adjust over time. Rents increase, dividends grow, interest rates reset. The key is ownership of productive capacity, not hoarding currency. Holding cash without purpose in an inflationary world is passive self-sabotage. There is also a psychological advantage to reaching financial independence early or midlife that is rarely discussed. It restores curiosity. When survival is no longer the primary driver, creativity resurfaces. People explore ideas without fear of failure. They invest in relationships. They make long-term decisions again. This has a compounding effect far beyond money. The transition from worker to owner does not require permission. It requires clarity. Clarity about what you are optimizing for. If you are optimizing for approval, consumption, or comparison, freedom will always feel out of reach. If you are optimizing for autonomy, the path becomes obvious, even if it is not easy. And make no mistake, this path is simple, but it is not easy because it demands saying no in a world designed to make you say yes. It demands patience in a culture addicted to immediacy. It demands confidence without applause. Most people cannot tolerate that discomfort long enough to reach the other side. But those who do find that the promise of $300,000 was never about the number. The number was just a line in the sand, a threshold after which time begins to work for you instead of against you. After that point, decisions slow down, fear fades, perspective widens. The economy will continue to change. Technologies will rise and fall, markets will overreact and correct. None of that negates the fundamental truth that owning income-producing assets is the most reliable path to independence available to individuals in the modern world. That truth has survived wars, recessions, and revolutions. And as 2026 approaches, with all its uncertainty and opportunity, the question is no longer whether it is possible to never work again with $300,000. The question is whether you are willing to structure your life in a way that makes freedom inevitable rather than accidental. Because once you understand the mechanics, the only thing standing between you and that outcome is the discipline to act consistently, even when no one is watching, even when progress feels slow, and even when the world tells you that you need more, when in reality, what you need is enough, properly deployed, patiently protected, and intelligently allowed to compound over time into something far more valuable than money itself. And this is where most people fail to comprehend the gravity and simplicity of the strategy. It is not glamorous, it is not flashy, and it is not widely taught because it removes the illusion of heroism from wealth. The world loves stories of overnight success, of billion-dollar exits, of lottery winners because they entertain, distract, and sell dreams. But freedom is quiet. Freedom does not need an audience. Freedom does not require justification. Freedom is built daily through repeated decisions that are rational, unemotional, and aligned with reality rather than aspiration. $300,000 is simply a milestone that validates that discipline over decades, compounds faster than luck ever could. It is the metric, not the magic. Consider the behavior. Oral aspect, human psychology is wired for immediacy. We want gratification now. We want recognition now. We want reassurance now. The paradox of financial independence is that the rewards are delayed yet permanent. The person who sacrifices a bit of comfort today to structure income-producing assets, control expenses, and build resilience will be the one laughing quietly in the years to come, while others chase jobs, promotions, and accolades that offer fleeting satisfaction but permanent obligations. The choice is stark. One path is patience with leverage, the other is busyness with fragility. Now, let's talk about leverage in practical terms, because 2026 is not going to reward raw effort alone. Leverage comes in many forms: financial, geographic, technological, and relational. Financial leverage is obvious, borrowing at low risk to acquire cash-flowing assets, but it is not mandatory. More powerful is time leverage, investing early, compounding patiently, and allowing systems to produce results that you do not have to sweat for daily. Geographic leverage is increasingly underrated. The ability to live in a low-cost jurisdiction while maintaining access to high-value income streams amplifies the power of every dollar saved. Technological leverage, the automation of tasks and creation of scalable digital assets, allows you to multiply output without multiplying input. Each of these forms of leverage reduces dependence on your labor, which is the core principle of never having to work again. There is also a profound truth that money alone does not teach. Freedom is as much mental as it is financial. $300,000 in a bank account is irrelevant if your mind is enslaved by fear, comparison, or indecision. The goal is not to escape work, the goal is to escape necessity. When you free yourself from necessity, you think differently. You evaluate opportunity, ties differently. You take risks that are calculated, not desperate. You stop worrying about approval and start optimizing for outcomes. That mindset, cultivated over years, is far more valuable than the capital itself because it sustains the capital indefinitely. Another element often overlooked is flexibility. The $300,000 plan is not static. It evolves with circumstances, interest rates, inflation, geopolitical events, and personal goals. A disciplined individual monitors and adjusts, reallocates assets, and hedges risk. Passive does not mean careless. Freedom requires active oversight, even if it requires no labor for survival. Markets fluctuate. Governments intervene. Technology disrupts. The difference between those who maintain independence and those who lose it is vigilance, not heroics. Now, let's be brutally honest about the alternative. Without a plan, most people will continue to trade time for money. They will spend years building skills, networking, and enduring corporate politics, only to find themselves increasingly irrelevant as automation, AI, and economic shifts compress opportunities. Retirement, as it exists in traditional narratives, is a mirage. Social programs are underfunded. Pensions are insolvent. Inflation erodes nominal savings. If you fail to take ownership of your financial life, you are essentially renting survival from institutions that are themselves stressed and insecure. $300,000 invested properly is sufficient not because it is a large sum in absolute terms, but because it converts scarcity into abundance. Scarcity forces you to sell at the wrong time, borrow at the wrong time, or work under conditions you hate. Abundance, in this context, does not mean extravagance. It means security, predictability, and optionality. Every dollar invested correctly buys you time, the most valuable asset of all. Time compounds, control compounds, confidence compounds. This is why modest but well-structured wealth is more powerful than vast but mismanaged wealth. And the social implications are profound. Individuals who reach this level of independence often behave differently. They are less reactive to trends, less influenced by consumer pressure, less susceptible to social comparison. They can participate in society on their own terms, whether that means volunteering, mentoring, creating, or simply observing. This independence produces a quality of life that cannot be bought with high salaries or luxury consumption. It is invisible to most people, but undeniable to those who experience it. It is also worth noting that economic cycles are unpredictable. Recessions, crises, and collapses will occur. Those without ownership, without cash-flowing assets, will suffer. Those with $300,000 invested intelligently will not live in fear. They will live in opportunity. They will recognize that markets panic, but capital does not. They will act when others hesitate. They will see the volatility that terrifies so many as a door to compounding their freedom rather than an obstacle. Timing is never perfect, but discipline ensures survival and growth through imperfect cycles. Finally, consider the personal dimension. Many people confuse work with purpose. They believe that without a job, they will lose meaning. This is a misalignment of identity. Financial independence is not about doing nothing. It is about choosing what matters without coercion. It is about being able to invest time in projects, people, or learning without the external pressure of income necessity. The freedom to choose projects that matter rather than projects that pay is the ultimate leverage. And $300,000, when properly allocated, buys that choice. You may feel skeptical, perhaps even cynical, because society has conditioned you to believe that freedom is unaffordable, that security is dependent on employment, that life without a paycheck is impossible. But the math is immutable. The principles are clear. The reality of 2026 is such that modest capital, disciplined behavior, and strategic allocation produce outsized freedom. This is not opinion, it is fact. Rooted in the economics of compounding, risk management, and structural trends in global finance and labor markets. And so, the question is no longer whether $300,000 can set you free. The question is whether you have the discipline, clarity, and courage to structure your life so that freedom becomes inevitable rather than accidental. To achieve this, you must start now, think clearly, resist societal pressures, allocate deliberately, monitor constantly, and understand that independence is a process, not a lottery. The reality is harsh, but the reward is absolute. The ability to never work again, not because life owes you, but because you took control, respected the rules, and acted when others hesitated. In conclusion, the path to financial independence with $300,000 in 2026 is not a fantasy. It is a precise strategy grounded in discipline, clarity, and action. It requires understanding the mechanics of capital, the power of compounding, and the structural realities of the modern economy. Freedom is not about extravagance. It is about control, resilience, and choice. It is about converting scarcity into optionality, risk into opportunity, and time into your greatest asset. The number itself is less important than the mindset, the habits, and the decisions that lead to it. Those who commit to this path gain more than money. They gain the ability to design their lives on their terms, to act without desperation, and focus on what truly matters. In a world of uncertainty, volatility, and constant change, this freedom is the ultimate security. $300,000 is not merely a milestone. It is the gateway to a life in which you are never forced to work again. Not because luck intervened, but because you took ownership, acted with discipline, and allowed your capital, your strategy, and your choices to serve you indefinitely. This is not just a plan. It is the blueprint for living life on your own terms.